Welcome back to our discussion on developing and expressing creativity and the conditions that can stifle it in our education systems. We're talking with Sir Ken Robinson, a visionary cultural advisor who's led a British government inquiry into the significance of creativity in the education system and the economy, and he was knighted in 2003 for his efforts. His most recent book is The Element: How Finding Your Passion Changes Everything, which explores the power of imagination and creativity and the importance of commitment to our own capabilities. As we get back to this part of the show, Sir Ken, I want to ask, what tips could you give if someone says, listen, how do I go about looking for my particular skills, my particular creative skills, and how could I look to find my own element? How could I find myself being in my element? What would you suggest, first starting point?
Well, I have a sort of four-step plan, so to speak, in part of the book. The first is, as I describe it, it's a sequence of I get it, I want it, I love it, and where is it? What I mean by I get it is that I think people should spend some time writing down and reflecting properly on their natural strengths, the things that they always felt they were good at, the things they were drawn to, the things where they felt comfortable and at home doing things. One of the people that I talk about in the book is a wonderful guy called Bart Connor, who found at the age of 8 that he could walk on his hands as easily as he could walk on his feet. And then he found he could walk up and down stairs on his hands as well. Not a lot of people thought much of this, except his mother did encourage him and took him along at the age of 10 to a gymnastics centre, and he went every day. And 8 years later, he walked onto the mat at the Montreal Olympics representing the United States in the male gymnastics squad. Oh. Now, here was somebody who had a natural aptitude. Another parent, might have said, Bart, will you stop it with the hands thing? Will you stop walking around on your hands and get on with your homework? So aptitude is really important. I was born in 1950, and I worked out recently that I was given a guitar at about the same time that Eric Clapton got his first guitar. It worked out for Eric, in a way it didn't quite for me, because he got the hang of this. So I think that's the first step, to write down the things that you felt naturally good at, even if it was a long time ago. The second thing is to try and then make some sense of which of these things did you really enjoy doing, what were you drawn to. The third thing is make a point of doing it. Find out these things and insist that you create some time to do it. All the people I know who have been successful in finding their element made time in their lives. Now, I know that may sound in a busy life it's difficult, but if it matters, you'll do it. And the final bit is to connect with other people who share your interest. Right. I have a chapter in the book called Where's My Tribe, and it's very important, I think, that you connect with other people who share your passion, because they help to raise your game, they enthuse you, and they affirm that what you're doing is important to them as well as to you.
Interesting you say that, because there's an email that we got from Amber Shahid in Saudi Arabia, which says, creativity is a blessing if one has freedom to express and speak. Otherwise, it is a crime to have creativity in a society where oppression rules. Is creativity dependent on one's surroundings, and does one's surroundings affect it?
Yes, there's no question. I do try to describe in The Element what it is, why it matters, and why we should pursue it. I think it's important for a whole range of reasons that we might come to, not just for ourselves, but for our countries and our economies. But there's no question too, and I talk a lot about this in the book, there are really strong barriers very often to finding the things that you're good at and want to do and pursuing them. Some of them are personal. We have personal fears, personal anxieties, a concern that we might look foolish or that the moment has passed. Personal fear can be a very big inhibition. There can be great social barriers, friends and well-meaning families who simply don't believe that when you say you want to go in a different direction that it makes any kind of sense. It could be just a raised eyebrow, saying, what, are you serious? Sometimes it's much more severe than that, by the way, and I give some examples of that in the book. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's cultural, where this is not thought to be appropriate, maybe. The course you're interested in may not be appropriate in your culture.
No, cool.
So there are very strong barriers very often, and the book is full of examples of people who've often had to push back quite hard to overcome them.
In the book, you've given examples of where schools have taken a more innovative approach towards, potentially dry subjects as mathematics, opening up a market and letting students experience it from a different angle. That's presumably a positive step.
Oh yes, I know wonderful teachers of mathematics, I know wonderful teachers of science. I really believe that this is not something that's only about the arts, as we said last time we spoke. It's about creating room for people to experiment and to innovate. And as one of your question is asked early on, it's really important that teachers themselves feel the opportunity to be creative in their own areas. Mathematics is too often presented as something where there's a single answer and you have to work it all out. So it is really about that. It's about a diversity, but it also honestly means thinking differently about schools themselves and how they're organised. I think we have massive opportunities now to use the new technologies, information technologies, digital technologies, to hugely enhance the quality of education for all children. One of your correspondents was saying earlier, if you live in a rural area where there aren't many facilities, well, these days we can be connected to the best resources everywhere in the world. If we think differently about how we use these technologies to enhance our own students' learning. And by the way, our children often know far more about them than we do. And I think they can help us learn the lessons that we need in order to help them learn more effectively.
Talking of technology, we have a chat room that goes on livestation.com as we do this show live, and a question came in from there from Mo in North Carolina here in the US, who says, how can creativity be learned?
Well, I remember talking to somebody recently who said, well, you can't assess creativity. And I said, well, look, actually you can, but you don't ever assess it in the abstract. People aren't just going around being creative in general. I remember talking to a professor of mathematics and said, how would you assess a doctorate, a PhD in pure maths? He said, one of the criteria is originality. Now, that's what creativity is to me. It's having original ideas that have value. So you always judge creativity in a context. Is this an original novel? Is this a creative piece of music? Is this a creative mathematical proposition? Is it a creative solution to a community issue? So you always have to judge it in relation to something. And you apply the right criteria in that particular setting. This is really important to me because it's not about arguing for creativity as an abstraction. It's a very concrete idea that only works if you apply it to real situations, like being a broadcaster or an interviewer. Are you creative in the thing that you're doing? Are you a creative soccer player, a creative gymnast? You always have to have a context for it. And to me, creativity is about having fresh ideas and approaching things differently. And that's really the key to our whole future, I think, as a global community.
Well, we've got just literally 20 seconds to go, and I guess it's going to be an interesting chance to chat with you next time about trying to be creative in this current global economic downturn, because I think a lot of people are having to be creative with their financing right now. So Ken Robinson, great to have you back on the show.
Great pleasure, Riz. Thank you very much indeed.
And thank you for being with us. On the next show, we look at the volatile situation in Pakistan. Tuesday's attempt to kill visiting athletes in Lahore underscores how serious things are there now. With a weak government and economy, and non-stop bombing by unmanned US planes, and the rising support for the Taliban, what does the future hold for Islamabad? Send in your questions to riz@aljazeera.net. But from me and the team, we'll see you next time.